Outings Entertainment. And coming up, we've got, this is looking at his list, yes, we've got Andrew Ferguson, we've got Duffy, and we've got the audience poem that you lot wrote. And having looked at this, all I can say is you're a bunch of very strange bastards. That's all I can say to that. Oh, right. And also, if anyone has a Kindle and a teenager that they want to corrupt, I've got a teenage book out on the Kindle, so it's interesting. Right, and it's available for 77p, so right, there we go. Okay. I'm going to do a poem for you first. I haven't decided which one. Any preferences? No, she doesn't want me to do any at all. Right, okay, there we go. She's shaking her head. Right, okay. Right, this one is called Don't Judge by Appearances. Because people look at me sometimes and they think things about me just from the way I appear and cook me meals, but without asking me whether my dietary situation is. So this isn't a pop at vegetarians or anything like that, right? This is about people making assumptions. Don't judge by appearances when you look at me, because I might be a hairy man, a freaky and a scary man, a leery and contrary man, but I'm not a vegetarian or macrobiotic fruitarian, a windfall, raw food, fresh fruit, vegan man, because I eat meat. And I try not to get too rude when everyone assumes that I eat hippie food. But I don't scoff the toffee and polenta. I don't miss the only pulses I like are the ones in my wrists. And I've got a headload of dreadlocks. I spend autumn hippie hill grazing, if you know what I'm saying. I dig things and have tongue piercing. But if it don't run fast enough, I say nab it and nosh it, because I eat saveloy, poached venison with a menace man, but corn, coins, veggie food, fawn, and lentils, dried meat, chicken, oriental. So if you see me on the streets hungry as hell, and let's face it, poetry doesn't pay too well, please feed me anything tasty just as long as it's not meat-free, because yes, you know the score, I'm a carnivore. Thank you very much. So I do have to say they have lovely vegetable, vegetarian and vegan dishes at the Forest Cafe as well. Right. Okay. I'm going to hand over to our next performer. So can you give it up for some more twisted tales from Andrew Ferguson?
Thank you very much, and thank you whoever bought my book. You're very brave. I lied about my children starving, meaning that there's only one, but she eats me out of house and home. So yes, I am Andrew Ferguson, and I'm from Fife. So Fife kind of, someone has to be, and so Fife kind of leads into a lot of things I write, and so yeah, so that's what I do. Are there any Isabel Allende fans in the audience tonight? Yeah. Ooh, you're just saying that. Are there any Cowden Beast fans in the audience? Okay, Isabel Allende, for any of you who haven't read her wonderful magical realist South American novels, is a wonderful South American magical realist novelist who writes these incredibly complex, slightly surreal, magical real novels about stuff and growing up in countries. So this is my homage to Isabel Allende. It's called Isabel Allende Goes to the Cowden Beast Game. You must go to the Cowden Beast Game, the ambassador said. He had his feet up on the desk and I noticed he was wearing Cuban heels. He was also chain-smoking Cuban cigars with no sense of irony, despite the politics of his brother's regime back home. It is an opportunity for our proud nation's footballers to experience the talents of another country, he said. This time I saw a glint of something else in his eye. He might be the Generalissimo's brother, but this posting to a consulate in Edinburgh was surely a disgrace. The desk was littered with magazines of women, and in one corner of it, caressed by the ambassador's Cuban heels, a bottle of tequila teetered on the brink. Where is this Cowden Beast? I asked meekly. Whatever I was to him now, the ambassador could remember me when I wore nothing but a cotton shift and came from the barrio. The ambassador waved his hand at the window that looked out onto the teeming, choked city beyond, somewhere to the north. You're a writer, Eva. Do some research. He often mixed me up with characters from my own novels. The ambassador's assistant was a thin, red-bearded man with eyes of an intense blue that seemed to look through my clothes to the very marrow of my soul and out the other side. Sometimes he didn't speak to me for days. Our relationship was very complex. I am to take you to the Cowdenbeath game, he said. And so it was that we found ourselves struggling through the capital city's tramworks to the railway station that bore the name of a novel. 3 years before, the then First Minister, a hated dictator, had fallen, and a new leader rose who promised to be the father of the nation. The ambassador's assistant seemed to know little of the politics of his country and cared less, and what delayed us most in the street was the fiesta that engulfed the city in the month of August. I boarded the train with an armful of flyers for theatrical events. None of those, the ambassador's assistant said coldly, will be playing in Cowdenbeath. The train crossed the broad river, and then at last I saw how the peasantry of that country lived. Simple brick houses huddled close together. The ambassador's assistant leaned forward, his blue eyes unfathomable. They say you are close to one of the guerrilla leaders in your country, he said. What kind of man is he? I remembered again the stories they told in my own city of the Generalissimo's brother, the ambassador, the rumours that he was too close to the army of insurrection. Then I thought of Ramon in the depths of the jungle fighting a war he could never win. He is a man, much like yourself, I said, although his beard is a different colour. The ambassador's assistant said nothing else for the rest of the journey. When we reached Cowdenbeath, it started to rain. The game itself was a disappointing affair. Our players moved with a kind of frozen poetry, unused to the hailstones that had now started to fall. You're not here to imitate the goalposts, a man to my left shouted. At least, I think that is what he said, although some of the words were in a language I did not understand. Some others I knew all too well, for the ambassador used them often. At half-time, the ambassador's assistant disappeared for some minutes and came back with something in a paper napkin, something covered in a greyish pastry and with the scent of the dead. It is a pie, the ambassador. It is considered a delicacy. I thought of Consuela as I tried to eat. Consuela, who had raised me along with her lunatic brother in a menagerie of three-legged animals in a deserted mansion half reclaimed by the jungle. Consuela used to make pies from rabbits she'd raised and then strangled herself, steaming mounds of meat and pastry she used to feed to the women of the village who visited her once a week to gamble on races she organised of the three-legged animals. I hope you've got all that. There's a short test. This pie was different. The second half was no better. 3 of our players were carried off the field on stretchers and the hailstones intensified. The local team's nickname is the Blue Brazil, the ambassador's assistant told me. There are many theories. I was still thinking of this when the game ended. The crowd filed out well, it is Cowdenbeath. Obesity problem. The crowd filed out silently, lost in their own thoughts. Out on the pitch, 2 Cowdenbeath players came to blows as the hailstones softened to rain. I was told later that one of the players had slept with the other's wife on more than one occasion. We waited until the stadium was empty and the floodlights were off, and then we made love in the centre circle. It has always been, the ambassador's assistant said, a personal dream of mine. I realised only then that the ambassador's assistant was a native of this country, and that, as a child, he had lain awake in Cowdenbeath dreaming, just as I had lain awake listening to the three-legged animals howling and fighting over the remains of Consuela's pies. and I thought of the Generalissimo's brother with his moustaches flaring and his Cuban cigars, and Ramon, the revolutionary leader, in his hammock in a secret jungle hideaway, and the Generalissimo himself, in his starched white uniform, and his beard that so frightened his people they never joined the revolutionaries. I had made love to them all, but none of them compared to the strange red-bearded man with the intense blue eyes. My mind whirled with memories as I lay in the centre circle when the rain fell, and I knew at last that a country whose dreams revolved around football would never rise in revolt, no matter how hated their dictatorship might be, and how bad their footballers were. At last, we had exhausted each other and lay sated in the rain. We have missed the last train, the ambassador's assistant said, staring deep into my eyes. Thank you. So the music upstairs has started just on cue because this is a bit of a shouty one, so I'm able to try and raise my game. I loved the poem about Terence Lager, by the way. I thought you weren't near the root enough. That's my rejection. This is about a rather nicer beer called India Pale Ale, which I like to sample now and again. And so after the third pint one night, I was thinking about the origins of India Pale Ale, and I spent literally minutes Googling. Came up with this story. And recently, these postcards were found which bore out the true story of the origins of India Pale Ale. It's called Postcards from the Raj, R-A-D-G-E. 14th June, 1840. Kishnau Hill Station, Kashmir, Northern India. My dearest Amelia, my unit arrived today at a little known hill station on our way further north. We've been detailed to relieve the garrison from a siege by the local tribes. We drove off the natives with little difficulty. They seemed a miserable, disorganised bunch who melted into the hills with few casualties. How they had even dared to bear arms against our gallant garrison beggars belief. A fine body of men from the Queen's Own Lowlanders Regiment. They're tough, experienced soldiers with a basilisk gleam in their eye. 15th June, Vishnau. Dearest Amelia, we decided to rest up for a day here at this hill station, a decision greeted with a hearty cheer by our Scotch fellows in the garrison. Of course, their enthusiasm for our extended stay was even greater when, unloading our supplies, they realised it included a consignment of Thompson's India Pale Ale, destined for our much larger garrison at Sikpur further north. As you know, Amelia, you and I signed the Pledge of Temperance together, and I would sooner cut off my own arm than break that vow, like the other vows we are to take when I return. But I know your soft-hearted nature would have allowed a smile, my dear, had you seen the simple joy in the faces of these good Scots lads when they saw they were to be afforded a tankard apiece with their rations. This is the real stuff, sir, quoth one of the sergeants, a fellow named Jamflers. Thompson's is brewed in Fife, where I come from, and is 100 times better than that Hodgson's we used to get. I admit, of course, the peculiar Scotch oath he used to describe the previous ale, which chimes curiously with the name of the hill station. I cuffed him pleasantly and set him to guard duty. I may add, it is juiced hot, and the curries the native cooks serve up barely reduce one's thirst. 16th June, Vishnau. The storm clouds gather from the north this morning as I write this from the sentry post, surveying the wreckage around me. I am distressed to relate, Amelia, that the garrison commander, who unfortunately outranks me, sanctioned 4, even 5 rations of the Thompson's IPA. Soon the fine fellows of the Queen's Own Lowlanders, along with my own men, were an unsoldierly rabble, the Scotchman's kilts askew with the ale, the hot sun, and the Bindaloo biryani the native cook served up for lunch took its toll. I think the raucous medley of Scotch drinking songs was what attracted the tribesmen's attention, but by the time they attacked, most of the garrison was slumbering. We fought them off with some casualties, but they will be back. I can only pray they do so when the men are sober. 17th June, Vishnau. A quiet day of baking heat, Amelia. I'm sure the native cooks must have a secret supply of chili powder, but no matter how I beat them, they claim it is the standard curry they always make for the men here. Surrounded by hidden enemies, waiting for us to sally out of the fort, we must rely on the well, which yields a sour-tasting, brackish water that barely slakes a man's thirst. 18th June, fish now. The heat, Amelia, the damned heat. When will these damned natives attack? When will the storm break? The men have been more moderate in their furtive errands to the barrels of Thompson's, but still the supplies of IPA, like of other things, must run out soon. 19th June, fish now. It pains me almost as much to write this, Amelia, as I fear it will pain you to read it. However, I must confess to you my misdeed. There can be no secrets between us when we're married. I broke my solemn pledge and sampled the Thompson's IPA. There it is said, but there is more besides and much worse. No sooner had I tasted the stuff than I acquired a taste for it. 1, 2, then 3 tankards later, I was leading a song I knew from my Eton days, when the whoops of attacking natives warned us of impending danger. Full of Dutch courage, I mounted the parapet and was challenging the devils to a fist fight when I was pulled off by one of my own men. I must have banged my head on the way down, for I lay insensible for some time as hostilities raged around me. By the time I woke, the firing had stopped and it was dark. With a blinding headache and racked by guilt for what I had done, I hit upon a way I could atone and remove the source of temptation for good. As you know, I am no weakling, Amelia, but it took all my strength to hoist the barrel of Thompson's up the steps to the parapet. A group of the ill-favoured natives were lurking not far below the walls, and I launched it at them when a shout made me turn round. It was Jamflers. "What are you doing?" he said, incomprehensibly, as the barrel bounded downhill towards the tribesmen. Jamflers levelled his rifle at me. "Do that to one mere barrel and you're dead, officer or no," he said, but I was watching the barrel's progress. It hit one of the tribesmen, a great fat fellow who slowed its progress almost completely. "There," I said to Jamflers, "that's a proper use for the foul stuff." I'm glad to say I didn't understand about one half of the oaths the Scotchman next pronounced. 20th June, Vishnu. Jamflers told me the stuff is brewed in Fife, but I can only surmise that Fife is an earthly outpost of hell itself. No one seems to be immune to its attractions, neither I, for a tankard of it sits beside me as I write, Amelia, I must confess, nor the Mohammedan tribesmen who, on opening the barrel we had thrown at them, proceeded to drink its contents down, like very Scotchmen. Then, inevitably, came the singing, and a series of shouts issued in our direction. I dragged one of our wretched native cooks up. "What is that infernal chanting about?" I shouted at him. "It is a war cry," he said, eyeing me fearfully. "It means, in your tongue, come and have a go if you think you're hard enough." "Poppycock," I snarled and threw him back downstairs. Putting my eye to the sights of the rifle, I managed to down a couple of the wretches as they danced, although I fear my aim is not as good as when I am sober. 21st June, Vishnu. My dearest Amelia, if this reaches you, it can only mean there is a spark of humanity in the tribesmen and they have passed it on to the frontier guard, or that a relief force has overtaken them. Why I ever considered them feckless brutes escapes me now. They are proud, hawk-nosed people and devious beyond measure. Last night, the native cooks decamped to join the tribesmen, taking the remaining Thompson's IPA with them. Too late we discovered their reserve supply of chili powder, hidden of course in a place we would never have looked, the first beer barrel to be emptied a bare 7 days ago. They attacked at dawn when most of our fellows were either too dog-tired or too inebriated to fire back. Now, as the sun climbs in the sky, only Sergeant Jamflers and I remain, the last barrel of Thompson's propping us up as we reload our rifles on the parapet. That was a bit of action. You can see why I do spoken word, can't I? Alright. For, dearest Amelia, the final irony is this. Devious as these damn curry-wielding dervishes might be, my fly fifer jamflers was yet more cunning. 2 days ago, when everyone else was asleep, he had rolled a full keg of the ale in among the empties, and it remained there undetected as the treacherous biryani merchants slipped out through the hill station gates last night. Thus, dear Amelia, the sergeant and I sit, awaiting the final assault, with the scent of hops in our nostrils and the taste of Thompsons in our throats. I am unsure what it is that makes this brew so irresistible. Jamflers claims it's something to do with the mine water it's made from, but its effects, I must own, are unexpected. Ye ken, Jamflers has just informed me, you're no a bad bastard after all. I confess my feelings for him are similar. It may of course be the India Pale Ale talking, but to be frank, Amelia, it's not as bad as these temperance types paint it. Always banging on about the evils of drink. But what about the goods, eh? What about the goods? So, Amelia, as I ride to bid the blasted natives to have a go if they think they're hard enough, and I reflect that I will never see you again, I've one last thing to say to you. Some considered advice from my sergeant. Get it up you while you're young.
There we go. That was Andrew Ferguson.